Some stories don't simply disappear. Welcome back to A Tribute from Hollywood, where we take time to honor the American stars we've recently lost, along with the global figures whose lives touched generations far and wide. If these tributes mean something to you, your gentle support helps us continue this work with the respect it deserves. Dion Anderson has died at the age of 87, a face that felt familiar to so many people, even if the name didn't always come to mind right away. Word spread quietly, without ceremony, the kind of news that doesn't hit all at once but settles in slowly and stays there. He was the sort of actor who turned up in the moments that mattered. Perhaps you recognized him from The X-Files, back when a television event actually felt like one. Or maybe it was the Shawshank Redemption in 1994, one of those films that people carry with them long after watching, the kind you find yourself thinking about without any particular reason. He was born in Texas in August of 1938. That era shaped a certain kind of person, one who didn't chase the spotlight but moved steadily toward it on their own terms. There was a quiet weight to him on screen. No excess, no performance on top of performance, just a presence that made every scene feel lived in. Sometimes those are the contributions that endure the longest, the ones that don't announce themselves. Colleagues remembered him as someone with genuine professionalism. He understood his role in a story, respected it, and delivered every time. When someone like that is gone, it isn't only a body of work that ends. It's a particular approach, a quieter, more patient kind of dedication. You think of all those evenings, familiar faces filling the background of daily life without ever demanding recognition. And then one morning the news arrives, and yet somehow they aren't entirely gone either. Not in any real sense. Phil Lesh has passed away at 84, one of the understated architects behind a sound that never belonged to any single genre. The announcement came simply, without fanfare, the kind of statement that gives you pause, particularly if you lived through what those years actually felt like. He wasn't merely the bassist of the Grateful Dead. He was part of something that grew beyond the boundaries of a band, late 60s into the 70s, long stretches of open highway, music that refused to end when the last note did. It expanded, it drifted, and somehow always circled back. Born in 1940 in Berkeley, he came up through classical training, trumpet first, then bass, and the difference showed. He didn't just hold the rhythm down. He seemed to be in conversation within the song itself. Woodstock in 1969 says plenty on its own. But that was only one night of many decades. What grew around him wasn't just a fan base, it was something closer to a community. Those who knew him spoke of how seriously the music lived inside him even when no stage was involved. And now that presence leaves behind a gap that resists description, because with someone like Phil Lesh, what's lost isn't only what he played. It's what people felt in the hearing of it, the freedom, the sense of beautiful unpredictability, the hours when nothing else seemed to press in. That feeling, somehow, hasn't fully left. Mariclare Costello has passed at 90. A warm and recognizable presence from an era when television felt more intimate, like it genuinely belonged in the room with you. The news came with quiet dignity. No noise surrounding it, just an announcement that pulls you gently backward to a different rhythm of living, slower, more settled. Most will remember her as Rosemary Hunter Fordwick on The Waltons, those years between 1972 and 1977 when families would gather around the screen together without needing to say much. She belonged in that world completely. Nothing performed, nothing reaching for effect, just presence. Born in Peoria, Illinois in 1936, she came from a generation that understood acting as craft before anything else. Her lifetime membership at the Actors Studio reflects that. It wasn't an institution for people looking for shortcuts, it demanded preparation, commitment, the real work. She had a rare ability to disappear inside a role rather than wear it. The kind of performance you simply believe without questioning why. Off camera, people described her as someone deeply thoughtful about process, not interested in the attention that might come after. When someone like her leaves, it doesn't shake the news cycle in an obvious way. It settles instead, quietly, the way an old memory does. You recall the evenings, the soft light of the television, characters who felt more like neighbors than performers. And without quite knowing when it happened, they became woven into your own story. That part doesn't leave. There's a version of Huey Lewis most people carry with them, the easy confidence, the relaxed style, a voice that never strained or reached but simply landed right where it was supposed to. But that came later. Long before any of it, before the charts and the band and the recognition, he was just a kid in New York City. Born in 1950, into a household that appeared stable from the outside but held its own tensions within. His father was sharp and deeply academic. His mother, artistic and harder to read. Two very different forces sharing the same space. That kind of upbringing leaves an impression. He wasn't the loud one, not the kid who filled a room. He observed more than he participated, and music wasn't yet a destination, it was somewhere to breathe when things felt off. By the late 1960s, while most people his age were settling into predictable paths, he walked away from structure altogether. He hitchhiked across the country, picked up odd work, and played harmonica in bars where no one was really listening. No promise of anything. And that period matters more than it's often given credit for, because when Huey Lewis and the News eventually took shape, there was no overnight success story waiting. Just years of playing and refining and showing up for rooms that weren't yet paying attention, until, gradually, they were. The early 80s brought change. Unhurried at first, but consistent. Songs like Do You Believe in Love eased their way into people's lives not as noise but as something that belonged there. And somehow, the man who had once wandered without direction became a voice people found comfort in, the kind you discover one day has been part of your life longer than you realized. Even in that, there was a quiet awareness in him that nothing was permanent, that all of it could shift at any moment. And perhaps that's part of why he held on to it with such care. By the mid-80s, something rare had happened. He didn't just have songs people liked, he had a kind of presence. Sports arrived in 1983 and didn't break immediately. It moved at its own pace until it found its audience, and then it didn't let go. Heart and soul. I want a new drug. If this is it. These weren't distant, untouchable records. They felt like they belonged to ordinary life. Then 1985 came, and with it Back to the Future. The Power of Love stopped being simply a hit and became part of a moment, the kind that attaches itself to a feeling and follows people into theaters, into cars, into memories they were making without knowing it. But that level of success carries weight. Tour after tour, city after city, the pressure to always be that same version people fell in love with. He delivered for years. Then in 2018, something changed, quietly, suddenly, privately. He was preparing for another show when his hearing shifted in a way he had no control over. Notes distorting, pitch becoming unreliable, music no longer sounding the way music is supposed to sound. The diagnosis was Meniere's disease. For a singer, that isn't just a setback. It touches everything. Dates were cancelled. Appearances stopped. The voice remained, but the ability to trust what he was hearing did not. That's a different kind of silence, not chosen, not restful, just uncertain. He didn't vanish entirely, but something in him drew back and recalibrated. He moved more time to Montana, away from expectation and noise, into a slower kind of living, fishing, open space, days that didn't need to prove anything. And yet he never completely stepped away. In 2020, he released Weather, not a grand return, not a declaration, just music. Honest, a little worn, still recognizably his. The kind of record that doesn't compete with its own past. It simply exists alongside it. And people listened, not because it was flawless, but because it was real. There's something particular about watching someone whose voice shaped a portion of your life move into a different chapter. It's a reminder that time moves through everyone equally, regardless of how permanent they once seemed. But he's still here. Still thoughtful, still grounded, still carrying the same quiet steadiness that was present from the very beginning, perhaps even more visible now that the noise has thinned. For those who grew up with the songs, with the moments, with the particular feeling of hearing them for the very first time, he hasn't disappeared. He's simply living in a lower register. And honestly, that might be the most truthful version of the story, because it didn't end. It just continued in a gentler key. Park Dong-bin has passed away at 56. Far too soon, and in circumstances that are genuinely difficult to absorb. He was found unresponsive at a restaurant in Pyeongtaek, a detail that lingers, not because it requires explanation, but because of how unremarkable the setting sounds. Just an ordinary place, an ordinary afternoon, until it isn't. Born in South Korea in 1969, he built his career with patience and consistency, not sudden fame. Over the years he appeared in dramas that reached far beyond Korean borders, particularly as international audiences began discovering Korean television through the 2000s and 2010s. Faces like his grew familiar even across languages and time zones. He wasn't always the focal point of a scene, and that was part of what made him valuable. He grounded things. He made everything around him more believable. Those are often the performances you find yourself remembering later, even if you can't immediately explain why. People who worked alongside him talked about reliability, arriving prepared, honoring the work regardless of the size of the role, treating the set with genuine respect. And now there's an absence where that presence used to be. For viewers who have watched television shift from local channels to global platforms, it's another quiet reminder of how quickly things move, how faces enter our lives with little announcement, become familiar, and then one day are simply gone before we've had time to fully notice they were there.